Coming up, the New York Football Giants are preparing for, yes, Thursday night football on a quick turnaround against the San Francisco 49ers. We update the injury state. Take a listen to Kayvon Thibodeux pushing back against fan support and also how I do that again. Bit weak. Coming up, the New York Football Giants prepare for Thursday night football against the San Francisco 49ers on the road. We hear from Kayvon Thibodeaux. How does this defense get pressure and stop Christian McCaffrey? Can the offense provide a repeat performance? And what do we know about key stats that tell us this could be a difficult road? We break it all down coming up next. Yes, sir. It's OGP, the One Giant podcast, where you know that we are your hosts over here at Armbrecht, breaking down the Brooklyn Nets and the Locked On Nets podcast for New Jersey Devils and the Devils Puck Luck podcast, joined as always by the pulse of the fan base, the seasoned generational ticket holder, the healthy, wealthy, and wise Mr. Andrew Akowitz, putting a new hat. I know you wore this last episode, but is that a new hat?
It is a new hat, fresh season, fresh hat. Wanted to get something going. You know, Adam, also Thursday night games, they just sneak up on you, right? Like usually we have until Sunday to get prepped and prepared for the game. Man, we're almost 24 hours away from game time.
I know. Quite frankly, not enough time to digest the previous game. Maybe want to just kind of bask in the afterglow of a good game, a good 2 quarters of play, especially on the offensive side for Daniel Jones. But very quickly, we get a dose of, where does this team stand? Obviously, the first 6 quarters were bad. The last 2 quarters were great. And getting into this one, we'll kick things off, obviously, with the injury updates, which makes it unfortunate on a quick turnaround like this.
Well, Adam, just a couple minutes before we went on, they did announce the updates for Wednesday leading up to the game. Saquon Barkley is now officially out. In
There we
addition
go.
to
See,
Saquon Barkley being officially out, Andrew Thomas is officially out. On top of Andrew Thomas being officially out, so are Ben Bredesen and Azeez Ojulari, with Micah McFadden and Wan'Dale Robinson listed as questionable. So the Giants are down 3 of their key players, 2 offensive linemen, and their all-world running back. That's got to give you some confidence going into Thursday against the 49ers, right?
Some ways you actually feel even more bullish about the situation. So no Saquon Barkley. We'll talk about replacing him. Obviously, Matt Breida is on this roster. I think there's an interesting talking point there for sure. Just as a note coming out of that last game with Andrew Thomas not being available and now missing this one as well, which I think makes all the sense in the world. I do wonder if you could know, hey, if they just on Sunday as usual, would this look different? Would decisions look different for certain players? But remember that Ezeudu gave a last block win rate in this past game against the Cardinals of 89.7. That was 21st for qualified tackles. You had 93.1 for Evan Neal. That's 15th. Even Marcus McCaffrey and obviously Glowinski, who flipped over to the left guard side, they were 18th and 27th, McCaffrey, respectively, in that spot. And how about Mr. JMS? John Michael Schmitz with a 100%. You can only be tied for first in that category. That is at least a positive when we look at this offensive line. We know the competition level's not going to be the same on Thursday. Far better. And we're talking about some of these pressure rates. But you have to take whatever positives you can to that game, including we know the Daniel Jones performance. Hey, the offensive line plays all we can do. We can only take away what we see week 1, week 2, and now here we are on a short week 3.
Yeah, listen, and the Giants had to do a lot of that coming from behind. They were trailing the entire game. So it wasn't like the Giants were up, they were multidimensional, they had the game script going their way. They knew in the second half that they were going to be dropping back and passing with Daniel Jones quite frequently, and they knew that there was going to be pressure coming from the Arizona Cardinals. And to see all of those different people across the line have relatively decent grades is encouraging, right? Like we saw, a couple mishaps from Evan Neal, in some of the run blocking. We saw a couple of mishaps from Glowinski, just kind of getting manhandled a little bit. But overall, it was encouraging to see what the offensive line looked like, especially with no Andrew Thomas. You didn't have your Pro Bowl left tackle there to just say, hey, guys, worry about yourself. I'm out here over on an island. That was Joshua Zudu instead. And the Giants looked okay. And that's kind of what we've been asking for, is just be middle of the road. Just don't be terrible at it, right?
Exactly. Listen, that's what I say. It's the Cardinals. Fine. But you performed well, right? It was a historic performance in the second half by Daniel Jones. And I think we said this the other day, you can, like, having a good performance against a bad team is one thing. Having a historic performance, you can take something positive and tangible away from that. So if you're not going to have Saquon Barkley in this game, this goes back to maybe the preseason and what you and I discussed about what we would have preferred, who we'd like to carry over to the roster. It's going to be Matt Breida. Obviously, you have the rookie Eric Gray. Obviously, you have Gary Brightwell. 83 total games played for one Matt Breida. He is a career 4.8 yards per carry. He gave 4.1 last year on 54 attempts, 220 yards for the New York Football Giants. Does this feel like, is this the reason why Matt Breida was still on this roster? Would we have been sitting here saying, boy, we wanted to go with the young guys, we wanted to go with the rookie, and now we're kind of missing a guy like Matt Breida in the spot, who Brian Dable said knows the system, knows the offense. We have full confidence in him.
Yeah, it just felt like they wanted someone that, if Saquon Barkley was going to miss some time, could step in and at least know the scheme, know the routes. May not have the same athletic ability that he used to, may not have the same burst that he used to, but at least he knows where to run and when to run, right? Like that's kind of what they're asking for when Saquon's out. They're not looking at it and saying, we're going to run the exact same scheme, exact same everything, no matter what running back there is. That's the difference of having a Saquon Barkley on your team.
Of course. And I think, listen, when we go into this game, I anticipate this still being the use of a lot of different weapons here. I think that Eric Gray will at least get a chance to be effective. I think that Gary Brightwell, whether or not we look at him as a special teams fixture, and he's certainly developed a little bit here, we're not going to hang our hat on a player, that needs to perform to X level. But I think he did look better last year in the first year of the Kafka system, right? So I think it's going to be mix and match and situational. Matt Breida, maybe in the pass protection game, is going to become even more important, whether or not he's a speed bump versus a real solid player in that regard. Again, knowing the system, I think the Giants, Kafka, Dable, you don't want to risk when you need a guy to chip. You just don't want to risk maybe Eric Gray saying, oh, I was a half a step short, or I didn't realize where I needed to be, especially if Jones is going to be adjusting assignments on the offensive side of the ball. Do you agree there? Is this a mix and match? Is it Breida because he has the pass catching ability? We saw Gray do some of it in the preseason, but I think by and large, it's that he has the versatility to be in the backfield and let the defense for San Francisco say, we don't know. We don't know which way he could be used here coming out.
Honestly, Adam, I know this sounds really crude and crass, but does it matter?
Doesn't matter.
Does it matter? Does it actually matter? You're talking about a bunch of guys that aren't Saquon Barkley against one of the best run defenses in the league. And that's not hyperbole. Sometimes we use the best, one of the best. Listen, San Francisco last season was second in the NFL with only 82.5 rushing yards per game. This year, they are third in the league, and they're only giving up 65 rushing yards per game. They do not give up any yards on the ground. So the question is almost twofold. It's like, does it matter who's going to be running the ball? Does it matter as much that Saquon Barkley isn't going to be there, knowing that we're not, like, most teams aren't effectively running the football against the 49ers? I think we both understand that this is going to be a defense and Daniel Jones game, even if Saquon Barkley was out there, right?
Yes, of course. And I think that's why coming up here in a second, we're going to ask that question. Can this be a repeat performance from Daniel Jones? What did we see in that Cardinals game that we want to pull over and certainly set a much earlier expectation in the game of how effective this offense can be? Before we do that, though, remind you, friends, about our other friends over at Death Wish Coffee, where you can use promo code TRYDWC20 at deathwishcoffee.com and get 20% off. You can go ahead and subscribe per order. Go ahead and send your favorite every single month. You get discounts that way as well. Currently, I am enjoying just a little bit of the vanilla coffee. It has a very strong scent of vanilla, but still has a great, delicious dark roast. I drink it every single morning, and I even drink it out of my Death Wish coffee mug, which they also have exclusive limited run coffee mugs that they release all the time. Fantastic product, fantastic coffee. I say go ahead and get a cup, Andy. If you're not having one already, over at deathwishcoffee.com, promo code TRYDWC20. Okay, so when we turn our attention back over on the offensive side of the ball, repeat performance for Daniel Jones? What is required of that? You mentioned those stats there for the defense for the San Francisco 49ers. We like that some of these new players getting plugged into the offensive line had some success. What do you want to see early from the New York Football Giants offense to say that, hey, win or lose, and we'll get to predictions later, they can at least hang. They can at least balance the time of possession early and give both sides of the ball a chance to be in this game?
It's really tough, Adam. It's like the chicken or the egg, right? Like, does the offense need someone like Jalen Hyatt or a Darius Slayton to stretch the field to give them opportunities? Will the offensive line hold up enough for us to be able to get those vertical threats deep? If the answer is yes, then it opens up all the underneath to people like Darren Waller, to people like
Mm-hmm.
Isaiah Hodgins, who run
Mm-hmm.
those crisp routes in the middle. The other question is like, do we need to get these short, quick passes to make sure that their pass rush doesn't get to us? Is that the style of play? I don't necessarily know how they're going to do this with this offensive line, knowing how great the defensive front is for the 49ers. I mean, it's two schools of thought. Obviously, those are the two paths for the Giants to move the ball. Which one do you think that they need to kind of set as the standard to start?
Yeah, listen, I think the idea of what we saw at the start of the second half against the Cardinals and that deep bomb to Jalen Hyatt, it was excellent. And you look at those win percentage rates by the offensive line, and you say, oh my goodness, if we can do that. Now, what I think becomes dangerous is that there's going to be a handful of those plays where the pass protection does hold up. And sometimes I think it's going to come down to, were they in the right setup for it, right? Is Daniel Jones pre-snap saying, hey, I think we got a bit of a safe opportunity here. The blitz is not coming. I got to beg my offensive line to get the job done. We saw a ton of 12 personnel get used against the Arizona Cardinals, right? That backfield where you have three bodies behind Daniel Jones. That means that you've got two or sometimes three bodies that can help protect. So I go back to that game against the Cardinals, the second half, and I say, this is what they are. They are a team, and this is what the best offenses are in the NFL. You need to stretch the field. Jalen Hyatt needs to see more plays here going forward. I think you have to look at Paris Campbell. You've been frustrated. No better opportunity to step up than right now. And I'd love to even look at a Sterling Shepard and say, let's get you in the mix just so we have some of those quick three-step drop opportunities. To this point, it doesn't look like that's something that's left in the tank for him. But without having Wan'Dale Robinson, you need as many shifty players as possible, maybe even Breida shifting out into a receiver spot at times to create some of that low-high opportunities for Daniel Jones.
Adam, there's a stat on Twitter from PRef is the one that gave us this great stat. The 49ers have the most pressures, 34, and the third highest pressure percentage at 30.6. So they're getting the most pressures, and when you drop back at least one third of the time, you're getting some kind of pressure on the quarterback. That doesn't bode well for a team that had almost 70% pressure rate against the Dallas Cowboys week
Yep.
one. Now, Ben Bredesen isn't there. Andrew Thomas isn't there. It's a completely different offensive line that we're going to see here against the 49ers. And so you almost feel like you can't take these deep shots too early without establishing that you can move the ball a little bit consistently. It's so hard, though. Like, do you almost have to challenge it right out of the gate, Adam, to say, like, we can't fall behind because we can't just sit back and make ourselves one dimensional. So how do we combat that? It's such a slippery slope with such a fast defense that can stop the run effectively like the 49ers can.
Yeah, and for me, like, and I agree with you, right? This is a tough matchup, especially on the short week. But if you can't do it at some point, then you're going to lose. Like, you're going to have to show it. Now, it doesn't mean that there isn't a right time or there's a way to get that set up. Like, so I think that is a very debatable thing of, what do you want to accomplish first? Maybe it is the short routes. Maybe you just run some of the dummies, right? Maybe it is sending Jalen Hyatt, sending Darius Slayton, sending even a Paris Campbell who does have speed. We think about underneath, and then we say, okay, Darren Waller, okay, Isaiah Hodgins, okay, Daniel Bellinger, or any of these running backs out of the backfield. It's going to be your job when we say, watch out, we're going deep, and that little space gets created there in front of the linebackers or just in front of the secondary. We need you to go pick up 5, 6, 7, 8 yards and make these second and manageables, third and shorts. And again, I hate to be as like simplistic around. It's like, you got to be able to go ahead and keep yourself on the field offensively, because when we flip over to the defensive side and we talk about Kayvon Thibodeaux here in a second, if you put them on the field the way it was in the first half against the Cardinals, you think 20-0 was bad. This team is littered with weapons. Brock Purdy is efficient enough. Christian McCaffrey is an absolute nightmare. Like, it's not going to be, hey, we were down, by a couple of scores going to the break. You're going to get buried, and this could feel very much like week one, quickly on Thursday night and in week 3 here.
The Giants are 28th in the league in opponents' rushing yards per game. We mentioned San Francisco being able to stop the run effectively. The Giants have not been able to do that. They give up 146 and change each game to opposing running backs. And Adam, listen, a lot of it has to do with game script, right? The Dallas Cowboy game got out of hand real fast, and they didn't have to throw the ball. So there's going to be some incremental, stats and stat padding on that side of it. But the Cardinals ran the ball all over the place the entire game against the Giants, and they did not look effective. And we mentioned Leonard Williams and Dexter Lawrence being off the field in key critical situations. If they don't have any game plan set up to at least bottle up Christian McCaffrey so that he doesn't get over 100 yards, the Giants are going to be in for a long day on defense.
Well, I'll tell you right now, Ward has not been particularly solid through these first couple of weeks. He's an older player. He's a veteran player. I don't think he's helped the run defense in that regard. Last week, as you mentioned there at the top in the injury report, Micah McFadden is questionable. He had 4 missed tackles out of 10 total missed tackles for the defense. So there was a problem there. Before we even get to Kayvon Thibodeaux, which is a big talking point here, but when I look at a guy like Isaiah Simmons, this game does feel maybe a little bit built for a player like that because he has the speed, and we're just talking about the ability to close and shut down runs as quickly as possible, get to the point of attack here, and when the defensive front is hopefully doing its job as well. Christian McCaffrey, man, 20 carries, 116 yards, 5.8 a clip against the Rams this past weekend, and the season opener, 22 for 152, 6.9 average, again another touchdown. And by the way, 2 big long runs, 51 and 65 respectively in each one of those games. The receiving, not nearly as big a deal. 3 catches in each one, 3 to 5 targets. That's all good. But I guarantee you, by the way, that it'll be a bigger factor in this one. Surprise, surprise. But when you look at that, man, it means that he's been able to hit a home run every week too. The Giants need to find a way. And this actually was my thinking on McCaffrey. It's like, I don't care if he goes for 120, but make it 120 and he gets it 4 yards, 3 yards a carry over and over again. Just avoid the big home run hits and keep some of the stuff in front of you. Force San Francisco to take time putting points on the board, right?
You mentioned he has 6.4 yards per carry on the year, and it's not on 1 or 2 runs. It's on 25 runs, 30 runs, right? Like he is so dynamic, Adam, that yes, he can hit a home run at any point, but he also gains positive yards on the other rushes that he has. Like you take the 40 or 50 yarder away, he's still getting about 100 yards in the game. And so that's the challenge that the Giants face is it's going to not necessarily be, for me, how many yards they give up to Christian McCaffrey. It's going to be what's the yards per rush? Are they able to bottle him up slightly to keep him under that 100? If he's getting, this is the game plan to victory in my mind, is holding Christian McCaffrey under 5 yards a carry, which neither the Steelers nor the Rams were able to do. But guess what? They both lost. And to me, being able to bottle him up a little bit and make Brock Purdy more one-dimensional and that offense more one-dimensional is the path to victory. And 2 teams haven't been able to solve it, and now it's on the Giants to be able to figure out that Rubik's Cube.
It's very interesting, man, as we start to get into the defensive front and maybe impacting a guy like Brock Purdy. You go back and look at him over these first 2 weeks of the season. Listen, it was an easy victory against Pittsburgh, 30-7, but in both of these games, he just hadn't thrown more than 30 passes in a game, 29 and 25 respectively. Completion percentage has been up over 65, 2 touchdowns, no picks, right? Like just Mr. Consistency. And by the way, though, the QBR is an 86.6 right now in the season, 94 in the season opener, and then even against the Rams, a 74.2. Like he's doing his job. And this is where I get a little bit concerned, and also where we just acknowledge how good the San Francisco 49ers are. I think you're right. It's like, well, make the 49ers one-dimensional. Okay, we can say that. But the thing that we don't know now after 2 weeks is when we look in the receiving room for the 49ers and you see Ayuk and you see Samuel and you know they have Kittle, like you do start to take this moment where you go, right, making them one-dimensional in a passing attack that has a lot of quick receivers, a lot of guys that can get open, that can get big yards after the catch. it presents just another problem. And that's when we get back to the defensive front and getting Brock Purdy off his mark. And that's when we get to a guy like Kayvon Thibodeaux, who I'm curious to see what your thoughts were as Thibodeaux spoke to the media, specifically discussing the fans getting on the Giants early in that Cardinals game.
Yeah, so Kayvon addressed the media and basically just said, you listen to the fans, they go out and boo us. And so it gives us, I'm paraphrasing this, Adam, but he basically said it gives me perspective that it's just us against the world, only the guys in that locker room, the coaches and players in that locker room. I mean, listen, how do these guys not take PR courses beforehand, right? Like, who's not advising Kayvon Thibodeaux on what to say, especially in the New York market, right? Like, you've seen the leaders that have been most successful use the term "we" when they're not doing well, and "I,"
Mhm.
or "we" when they are doing well, "I" when things go awry. Guys that are accountable, guys that don't say anything, like Derek Jeter and Eli Manning, end up being very successful. To alienate the fans because they're booing when you're down 60-0 in the first 6 quarters of the season seems a little strange to me. And then he
Mhm.
also mentioned that everyone's all these like couch general managers saying that he's not getting pressure and he's not doing things. They don't know the schematics. And it's like, Adam, he doesn't have any pressures. He hasn't had any sacks. And yes, there were about 20 to 25% of the snaps where he was asked to drop back into coverage. But like Joshua Dobbs still threw the ball 31 times. There were still other opportunities for him to beat
Yeah.
men one on one and go after the quarterback, for him to kind of absolve himself completely of any individual responsibility seems a little bit strange to me. Like, it's very easy to say the fans pay money, they want us to win, they're passionate about them. We need to do
Right.
better. We need to get pressure. I will do my part. That's all you have to say. And instead, it's like us against the fans. It makes no sense.
Yeah, it's John. I mean, like you say, Johnny generic quote, right? Yeah, we want to give the fans what they want. We want to be winning games. We were worth billing in the first 6 quarters, and that part of it, that's what you should have said. That's fine. Then to your point, the second part of it is, and I think you go back and you watch it. Yes, there were times when he was double teamed. There were times when they gave extra attention to Kayvon Thibodeaux. Then we take the step back here, and we mentioned this in the post game coming out of even a Cardinals win and thinking about the first 2 weeks in totality. Great, Wink Martindale saying you got to drop back into coverage sometimes. We want to use you in space. Okay, but that's because you are a top 5 pick in the NFL draft and because you are believed to be a player that has a versatility level that says we can do that with you and you can be an impact player in those moments. That's the other part that I think is tricky because if you are going to be in coverage, then you need to be making the plays. You need to be breaking up passes. You need to be defending against tight ends in space, or you need to be getting downhill when they use the running backs out of the backfield on those swing passes. Whatever it is, I need you to be doing it at a high level. And it's not even a knock because I've seen him set the edge against the run fairly well over the course of the first 2 weeks when those opportunities have come up. But you're supposed to be a game wrecker. And I think we are, maybe Evan Neal kind of goes in this category too, right? These are the two guys. This is the first big draft class for Joe Shane. And you look at them both, and I think right now you'd say, we're not blown away just yet. And it doesn't mean we don't think they can't get there. But right now, Evan Neal is clearly struggling, and he seems to come along, maybe gets his right footing here against the Cardinals. I said this last time, like Kayvon Thibodeaux, like you're supposed to be not in the same vein, but like you're supposed to be the next Strahan of this team. You know, you're supposed to be the Michael Strahan of this defense, a game wrecker that teams go, holy crap, even when we double team him, he still gets through. And then it trickles down to the other players on the defensive front, and they need to punish them when they double you. But I just haven't seen that burst yet from him. And addressing the media in that way just makes it feel like you're either looking while you're talking about the fans, it feels like you're looking inside the building and you're saying, well, Wink Martindale uses me how he wants to use me. Maybe I don't totally love it. And we already heard in the offseason Wink challenging Kayvon Thibodeaux. I need him to come in and be a game wrecker, at least for 2 or 3 big moments, like we saw once upon a time last season against the Commanders, right?
Yes, exactly. You mentioned that Commanders game where without him we do not win that game. We know that it is possible. We know that there is athleticism and talent. But it's not just us saying it. You pointed out his defensive coordinator said we need more out of Kayvon Thibodeaux. He said that before the beginning of this season. So it's not like
Right.
we're making this up where it's all of us against him and everyone else is saying something different. His coaches are telling him that. And Adam, you mentioned it. A lot of responsibility comes with being a top 10 draft pick. A lot of responsibility comes when you are a boisterous impact type of player
Yeah.
that's going to get to the quarterback and wants to embrace all the energy and positivity when things go well. You can't shun everyone else away when things aren't showing up on the stat sheet the way that you want them to. This is the type of game where Kayvon Thibodeaux, it doesn't have to be a sack, doesn't even have to be a fumble. He has to make an impact on this game, whether it's stopping the run, whether it's making sure to tackle Kittle short of a first down. It doesn't matter. He needs to be impactful in this game.
Yeah. Yeah, that's 100%. It doesn't have to be any one key stat. You just need to be someone that we talk about throughout the course of this game and saying, there we go. That made the opportunity for another play on the defensive front. It allowed the rookies on the outside to have a chance against guys like Ayuk, against guys like D. Sam. By the way, we say over the course of this game as well, reminder, both those top two receivers, 11 receptions for each of them, 172 and 118 combined, couple of touchdowns for Ayuk. Obviously, like, we know that these guys can be playmakers for them. And the last before we turn attention over to FanDuel, the betting lines, the fantasy, and our predictions is, as a reminder, went over and check this out on NFL Next Gen Stats. Come to rushing yards over expected. Christian McCaffrey leads the league with 98 yards over expected through just 2 games. That means that even when the offensive line is not perfect, that even when the hole is not just right, he's making guys miss, he's breaking tackles, and this is where I need Kayvon, Dexter Lawrence. By the way, we don't mention his name because it's been relatively disappointing to start here too. Leonard Williams. How about you, big body there, and get some things done across this defensive front as well? There are a million things that we could go deeper on here. But the short week pills us a little bit. I feel pretty good about what we've discussed here. We're still going to outline now as we turn our attention over to the betting line, the fantasy of it, and predictions. Chance to highlight a couple more key guys, I think, on the Giants side of the ball, maybe specifically on the offense, Andy.
Yeah, so when we talk about the betting lines, the New York Giants right now are 10.5-point underdogs. That's pretty much where the line opened up. I think everyone kind of knew that Saquon was going to be out. I think Vegas also knew with the extended time that Andrew Thomas might sit out as well to give him a little bit more rest, make sure he gets right. So the line really hasn't changed, and the over-under is sitting at 44 right now. I think it opened up right around 45, so people are betting it slightly under. Initial reactions, Adam?
This is this feels like a 34-10 kind of game is what Vegas may be calling for here, right? Comfortable for the San Francisco 49ers. That's a massive line. I laid that last week when it was the Raiders and the Bills, and that worked out for me and so there are some chances when that happens in the right way. From a Giants perspective, I just think there's not the Cardinals game doesn't count for much in the eyes of the National Football League and in the eyes of the betting money. And you mentioned no movement on the line here. So usually we say, oh, which way has the money been pushing things? Pretty nowhere. It opened up. 49ers are heavy favorites. They're going to be heavy favorites. And the question really now, Andy, is do we think the Giants are going to be able to do something offensively and make this game interesting? Because even if the defense plays well, I think you can still find yourself giving up 24, 27 points in this game to a team that has a lot of options on the offensive side.
Well, that's the hardest part about figuring out the path to victory for the Giants, Adam.
Oh, yeah.
I don't think the Giants can win if they give up more than 20-ish points. Like, if it gets to 24, if it gets to 27, you're asking a depleted offense against one of the best defenses in the league to go make it happen. And for all the people that were cheering about Daniel Jones in that second half performance, there are going to be people on the other side of the Daniel Jones discussion that say, great, this is his opportunity without Saquon and Andrew Thomas to show that he's a top 10 quarterback in the league. Go out and win one when you don't have any of the weapons like other quarterbacks do. I just don't see I don't see a world where the Giants offense can put up more than, say, 20, 21 points against this formidable defense, which means that the defense has to step up and has to limit what the San Francisco 49ers offense can do. Adam, they're basically at full health, right? Our defense is supposed to be one of our strong suits. The offense is looking at the defense saying, pick us up, give us an opportunity, keep us in this game. Field goals, not touchdowns. If you can keep it around 20 points, we've got a shot. If it gets up into the high 20s, into the early 30s, it's really tough to expect anything from this Giants team.
No, 100%. And just as a reminder over on FanDuel, if you're talking about what we think is going to be going on here for Daniel Jones, some of the alternate passing lines, if you say over 200 passing yards for Daniel Jones in the Giants offense, that's going to be minus 162. But you're not too far off from getting to the 25, which is a plus 126. So again, if I think the Giants have a chance in this one, maybe go ahead and put the bet in on over 25 Daniel Jones passing yards, because they're going to need to do it. They're going to need to have a couple of those big chunk plays. And even if the game is getting out of hand, if we're just talking fantasy wise or wise, you can still make a couple of bucks on maybe some late air outs that you're going to have from Daniel Jones and the Giants. The other thing here is, man, what do you anticipate in terms of turnovers? Because there hasn't been like a ton of these. We talked about last week, the one that goes through Saquon's hands, it bounces off. Got to try to win that turnover battle if at all possible. At a minimum, give the ball away. Do you see Daniel Jones, if this offense is opening it up a little bit more, going, yeah, maybe I'm going to have to sacrifice a couple of balls here if I give myself the chance to be in this?
Well, it's all relative to the defense, Adam. I think that's a great point.
Yeah.
If you feel confident in your defense to keep this a game, then you sit there and say, we got to be conservative, take our chances when we can, just manufacture any points on the board. As long as we stay within a possession, 10 points, we're always giving ourselves a shot. If it feels like the Giants defense is not going to be able to stop them, stop Brock Purdy, stop Purdy, you may need to say Jalen Hyatt gets out there sooner rather than later, and you try to take the top off the defense as soon as possible, saying, we're going to have to score points because this is going to be a shootout. I just don't think the Giants' offensive line gives them enough of an opportunity to take those risks. I think you got to bank on the defense turning this around.
By the way, interestingly enough here, you talk about, sometimes you go over on FanDuel and there's fun things like predicting the correct score, which is, very hard to just go ahead and pull some numbers here. But if you want to have a sense of the Giants, they think maybe can hang around in this thing, some of the quote lowest odds, which are still going to be sitting around, plus 6,000, plus 9,000, things like that. They are scores that are 20-19, San Francisco 49ers. 20-14, San Francisco 49ers. The theme here is that it is San Francisco 49ers winning these games, but you get into some really insane odds when they talk about 49ers in the 20-plus point territory and the Giants being under 6 points, being 21-3. That's plus 42,000. So there's a real expectation, I think, to go back to the top of the betting line here, that it's going to be methodical for the 49ers. They don't have to take any real chances. They can let Christian McCaffrey get the chunk plays. It may be indicative that the Giants are going to try to keep everything in front of them as much as possible. And it's going to come down as this slow bleed happens and it's 7-0 and it's 10-0, 10-3, 14-3. Can the Giants find a way to that big offensive punch? Do you have any betting lines you want to throw in on this one before we give our official predictions here?
Well, I was just gonna say you bring up a
Right,
good
yeah.
point about Daniel Jones. His over under passing yards is 211. It's right in that sweet spot between 200
Yep.
and 225 that you mentioned. If you think the Giants are going to be able to hang in this game, that is a good one. Remember, Adam, the San Francisco 49ers, if there's one weakness, and I'll use that term very lightly, it is in their pass defense. The the
Yeah.
the um the San Francisco 49ers, when it comes to passing defense, are about 23rd in the league. They give up 247 and a half yards passing. You got to think
Yeah.
that with Saquon Barkley hurt, the Giants are looking at it and saying our only chance is to throw our way to a win. So for me, I think taking the over in Daniel Jones's passing yards at 211 is the play.
So why I would take that, and I would also take something like Darius Slayton over 50 plus receiving yards, 188. I wouldn't go maybe as extreme as 60, but a big chunk plays for him. We saw those pay off in week number 2. Darius Slayton is going to still be, especially if you get Jalen Hyatt out there on the field, the third or maybe fourth most important kind of guy that they take a look at there. Hopefully, didn't overexpose that his hands have improved against the Cardinals, where the 49ers pay more attention. All right, prediction time, my friend. You said it is the 49ers at home, laying 10.5. Where do you stand? Not only on if you take the points, but are we calling for an outright New York Football Giants victory? Andy, go ahead. That's what you said in the pre-show. You said Giants win 40-10. I think was what you said.
Wouldn't that be nice? What a turn of events that would be. Imagine the conversations if the Giants went to San Francisco on a short week and won by 30 points. What a different
Be
tone
something.
this whole thing would take magically.
Oh, sure.
Um, listen, I think that I think this San Francisco defense can be had through the air, Adam. I really do. Listen, they played Kenny Pickett week 1. We're seeing the limitations of the Pittsburgh Steelers
Yeah.
passing offense under Matt Canada. I kind of take that with a grain of salt. Matt Stafford played against them last week. Matt Stafford is obviously a upper caliber type quarterback in this league. He threw for basically 300 yards against this defense. Granted, they were
Yeah.
trailing. Still, you can move the ball a little bit on this defense through the air.
Yeah, 17 apiece, by the way, at halftime. The Rams lost that one in the second half of that game based on adjustments alone.
Yeah, so I kind of look at it where I'm saying the Giants might be able to move the ball. It's just tough when you lose Saquon Barkley, you lose that red zone threat. Like inside the 20, you really want that explosiveness to make it a little bit more one-dimensional when the field gets shrunk down at them. And so for me,
Mhm.
that's really where I'm struggling to figure out how the Giants are going to make touchdowns instead of field goals. So for me, I just think that this could not come at a worse week, short week against a worse opponent on the road with all of your players injured. It just feels like a mountain that's too hard for this giant team to climb. I want to see some pride from the defense. I just don't know how you can stop this offense. I'm going to go the San Francisco 49ers 27, the New York Giants 13. I'm going to think that the game's going to go under, but yeah, I don't have much confidence right now in this game.
So the interesting thing about that, though, is you're calling for the San Francisco 49ers to score the fewest points they have this season. So you start to make the comparisons. Well, the Rams or the Pittsburgh Steelers, have they been better or worse defensively than the Giants have looked these first two games? Was the second half of that Cardinals matchup a little bit of a wake up even for the defense, who only gave up 8 points in that second half? Hard to TBD, because we don't think very highly of the Cardinals offense or team is as a whole. Now you said 27-13, so you'd also be saying that you would take San Francisco and lay points if you were a betting man. I agree with you. I think that something was figured out, or at least something was realized when it comes to the offense. And then combined with the absence of Saquon Barkley, I think the Giants just have to lean into their passing game week. I think maybe we are going to see some turnovers for better or worse, because you need to take some chances. I think the offense figured enough out to be able to put some points on the board here. It's going to come down to Daniel Jones, standing in, taking some licks, like getting beaten up here at times, so that he can still be there with some of the opportunities to move the ball down the field in big chunks. Incidentally, remember, almost 60 yards rushing this past week. I think that becomes a massive factor. Won't be surprised if Brian Daniels, whoever's calling the plays on offense, tries to get him out on the edge with his legs very early in this game and say, hey, and I don't mean big runs. I mean, there was 5 yards, now 5, right? Those plays could be critical to this team having success, and then including those underneath routes when we see the linebackers come down, maybe spy on Daniel Jones as well. I cannot, in good conscience, call for the Giants to win this game. We all get that. But I don't hate the idea of a 30. I'm going to say, because I want to hedge that little money there too. I would take the Giants in the points, because I'm going to call for a 31-21 victory of the 49ers. The Giants get a cover there by a half a point. I actually think they are able to move the ball here a little bit. And most importantly, maybe it's a 17-10 game at halftime, where you feel like coming out, there's still some things you can accomplish, right? You can go through the third quarter, and it just becomes a grind at that, where the talent level weighs out, especially on the defensive side of the ball. Unless you're going to tell me the Giants wake up in a big way defensively, I just cannot see them shutting down the 49ers, right? I'm shocked, actually, that I'm more concerned at this point in week 3 that the defense hasn't shown me enough here to think I can have confidence in them.
Yeah, I mean, I could. You can certainly see the game script going that way. Maybe the Giants are down. One thing to note on your prediction, Adam, there is
Yeah,
a direct correlation to an outright underdog winner with the
here we go.
under in the game. So the path to victory, most likely, according to Vegas and betting odds and everything else, is the Giants would win in a low scoring game rather than a shootout. So if you are thinking about the Giants making an upset, look at something like 17-13 Giants in a weird game where there's costly turnovers. That's usually
Right.
the correlation between the underdog pulling off an upset and the under essentially hitting.
I would say, at the end of the day, if the Giants were going to pull this one out, you mentioned it earlier, you got to hold San Francisco to 20 points or fewer, probably, right? Like 21-20, be to 23, like something has to happen. A special teams turnover, a big short field. And we'll know very early in this game, right? If one of those moments happens and the Giants a field goal, you're going to go, okay, well, we had a good time, right? Special teams, kickoff fumble, Giants start with the ball at the 18 and end up with a no field goal. It's not going to be enough. Expect the Giants, by the way, to be going for it on a lot of fourth downs here. Analytics will tell you this as well, but I think anytime they're even close to being on the right side of the 50, you're going to see them going for it a lot, knowing that they want to put up some points here. But hey, I think you'd be a fool to say that you have any confidence in the way you want to predict these games. I think more than anything, we want to see the Giants continue to play with some consistency on both sides of the ball. Let's watch that offensive line. Again, second big game here for a lot of these young players. How are they going to perform? Can they continue to get consistency? That's all we want right now. And we'll kind of break down, by the way, on the way out the door. Oh, Andy, let me do this real quick. It's a long episode, but I also crunched the numbers on a poll here about where we thought the Giants would be a few weeks from now, and it included the San Francisco 49ers game. So I want to make sure that we got this out there to the people. Basically universally split, Andrew. 4 wins when they go to play the Jets in week 8. 23% of the fan base. That's bullish. I like that stuff. It means you're getting a win here on Thursday night. 27% both for 3 wins and 2 victories, but almost a quarter of the fan base says just the 1 victory that we currently have. So when you have the Dolphins, you have the Bills, it's going to be a difficult road here. Commanders are in there also. There is no consensus about how the fan base feels around this team right now. That could be a good thing because it means that we still hold on to hope that they can win some of these games. It's by having a decent performance and showing against what might be the best team in the NFC.
I think everyone was confused, Adam, in that poll because you did you put 5 wins on there? Did
not drop the 5 in. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, Andrew, would you have been the 0.001% that voted for 5 wins?
Well, now that I just predicted San Francisco is going to upset the Giants, I don't know if 5 is necessarily in the cards, but hey, give the team what they want. Let's say we're going to start getting some momentum at them. Put the 5 up there so fans can vote with their heart and not their head.
I'll even throw in, can the Giants be undefeated? Why not, right? Let's just throw in some magic here. Maybe there's that one. Guys, tomorrow night, Thursday Night Football, big spotlight, national stage. We said the Giants have a lot of these throughout the season. This is an opportunity for some redemption from that week 1 flub on Sunday Night Football. Until next time, though, you get us over on Twitter at Adam Armbrecht, at AndyMac214, at One Giant Podcast, on YouTube by the same name, and of course on those podcast feeds as well. Until next time, Andrew, as game day approaches, as the people would, I've done this now. I'm just going to listen. We leave this in. We leave it in. As Andy Mac would want, need, and nay, demand the people know.
As always, let's go Big Blue.